Hi, I'm Jack Draper. Shout out to QualityShot Tennis.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. We have a really exciting preview and prediction video to get through. It's our first quarterfinal preview, and it's for Carlos Alcaraz versus Stefanos Tsitsipas for the Roland Garros 2023 quarterfinal. Before we get into it though, remember to hit that like button, do subscribe if you are new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Also, shout out to our members. You guys are legends, of course. We really appreciate your support. Okay, so this is going to be a preview and prediction for this matchup. This is how we're going to do it in a pretty similar way to how we always do it. If you've watched our preview videos before, I'm going to have a quick look at their route to this stage, the quarterfinal stage, who they've played, how they've looked, and then we'll have a brief look at their head-to-head as well. So looking at how those matches have gone, mainly looking at the most recent one, which was Barcelona only a few months ago. The Barcelona final where Alcaraz came out on top. The head-to-head is 4-love to Alcaraz, so Tsitsipas has never beaten the young Spaniard. And then what I'll do is I'll break it down more tactically and strategically and talk about what we might see unravel during the match, and also what both players might try to take advantage of when it comes to tactics as well. On top of that, I'll give you guys my prediction at the end, so stay tuned for that. Okay, let's get into it then. So, in terms of the matches that Alcaraz has played, he's looked quite good. He's only dropped one set on his way to the quarterfinals. Kaboli, he beat in straight sets. Tara Daniel in 4. Shapovalov in straight sets. And then Musetti, who a lot of people, including myself, thought might give him some sort of test. He dismantled him in straight sets. A pretty good warm-up, you'd say, for Tsitsipas in the sense that they both have one-handers, although different style of players, you'd say. Musetti has arguably a much better one-hander than Tsitsipas, and then forehand-wise, you'd say Tsitsipas has a superior forehand. Serve-wise as well, Tsitsipas, although both players do like coming forward to the net. Both are pretty attacking players as well. So some similarities in their play. For Tsitsipas, he's had an easier route, you'd say. Yuri Vesely in the first round, he dropped a set to him, but since then it's been all straight set victories. Carbes Baena, Schwartzman, and Offner all getting beaten in straight sets. So he will be fresh going into this. Both players will be at their best, you would imagine. Then if we look at their matches from previous years, including 2023, of course, you can see the last 2 times they played were in Barcelona on the clay. Both times, very, very impressive matches. Alcaraz beating Tsitsipas in straight sets this year. Last year, he beat him in 3 sets. They also played in Miami last year. Alcaraz won in straight sets. And then the US Open 2021 matches where they first played, and that was a really enthralling matchup. Very, very exciting. It's where Alcaraz, you'd say, made his real big splash and won in 5 sets early at the US Open there. So there's definitely a mental side to this matchup as well. Tsitsipas, given that he's never beaten Alcaraz, I think he will have mental obstacles to overcome, not just physical and tactical obstacles when playing Alcaraz if he wants to get the victory. He has a lot of respect for Alcaraz. I think he acknowledges that Alcaraz is, he is a special player. And he said in post-match interviews, especially when he's lost to Alcaraz, that even though he's younger, himself and other players of his age do look up to Alcaraz because, yes, he might be younger, but in terms of his level, he is arguably above, of course, a lot of the players on tour, given that he's the number one. He's won a slam, for example. So let's break it down then strategically and tactically, and how might it look, and what, for you guys at home, what might you want to potentially keep an eye out for? So in a lot of these matchups, there's a few things that we tend to always talk about. And I think one of the biggest things, of course, is the backhand to backhand, so the ad-court battle. And I do think that's really important for most matches. Unless you've got 2 players that have got very, very good backhands and almost very solid backhands that cancel each other out. That tends to be where a lot of the exchanges from the back of the court tend to be won or lost. And I feel like this matchup is no different in the sense that we know Tsitsipas has a weakness on the backhand side, but given it's clay, he's got a lot more time to run around his backhand and hit a lot more forehands. So the percentage-wise, in terms of the amount of backhands he needs to hit on clay, it's a lot lower than it is, for example, on grass, which will be coming up after the Roland Garros. You'll have to hit a lot more backhands there, and even on hard courts as well. Clay's a slower surface. People hit with a lot more coverage over the net, a lot more height, and Tsitsipas knows he's able to hit more forehand. So that's an advantage for him, no doubt. It also means he's got more time on the backhand. So he should, and I think he does, hit with a bit more quality on clay with the backhand. It's still not enough quality to, in my opinion, give him an advantage of any sort against Alcaraz's backhand or Alcaraz's into out forehand, even. But it's a positive in the sense that I think he can hold his own more on the backhand side. Now, that exchange is really important, and I'll tell you why. Because with Tsitsipas's backhand and even his forehand, his into-out forehand, they need to be good in terms of his level. On that side, he needs to be hitting those two shots at a really high quality, I think, to beat Alcaraz. They need to have depth, they need to have direction, and they need to have some sort of pace. Mainly depth and direction, I would say. And I'll tell you why. Because if he doesn't hit with depth, direction, and or pace, I would say, then he's in trouble. If it doesn't have enough direction, if it's not enough of an angle, Alcaraz will obviously hit a forehand. But the biggest thing for me is that he wants to be trying to get Carlos to hit as many backhands as possible. Alcaraz can still hurt you with a backhand, but not as much as a forehand. He's got 3 options on that forehand side. And on the backhand side, he's got a couple as well. We know he can hit the drop shot on the backhand side as well. So that's something to look out for. And that's why I do think that depth is really, really important in that ad court exchange. If he doesn't hit with depth, there's a worst case. There's 3 worst case scenarios. If he doesn't hit with depth or pace or or with height as well, depth, direction, and pace, then there's a few things that could happen. Alcaraz will utilize the into and forehand and attack. He'll utilize the into out forehand and attack to Tsitsipas's backhand, and Tsitsipas will then be in a compromising position, or he'll utilize the drop shot, especially if the ball is shorter. Tsitsipas will have 3 things on his mind to think about if he doesn't hit with quality in those exchanges for the most part. Alcaraz's drop shot is a real killer because what happens is he has the power to push you back and make you think about what might happen if you're going to have to defend from 2-3 meters behind the baseline. But then he also has this exquisite drop shot, which means you have to then second guess your thinking and think, okay, do I need to be ready to come forward? Tsitsipas needs to get into a position where he's not allowing Alcaraz to hit drop shots on a frequent basis and really dictate the rhythm. If Tsitsipas hits with a lot of depth and he is able to dictate proceedings with his forehand and utilize his into-in forehand and into-out forehand, that's where he's going to have success against Alcaraz. If Alcaraz is the one on the front foot, Alcaraz is able to hit a lot of ground strokes on the baseline or even inside the baseline, Tsitsipas will be in trouble because Alcaraz coming forward and transitioning to the net is a real problem for not just Tsitsipas but all players. You want to have Tsitsipas behind the baseline defending because yes, he's a great defender, but he's at his best when he's coming forward attacking and dictating proceedings from the back of the court. So I do feel that for Tsitsipas, he wants to hit as little backhand as possible, but when he does have to hit the backhand, it needs to be backhands of quality. Now, can he do that against Carlos Alcaraz on a consistent basis? That's a real question mark around that. There really is, because the issue he's going to have is I do think that he can hit with depth, but it might not always be then with direction. And I think he might be able to hit with pace, but then it might not always be depth. And I think with his backhand, to have all 3 of those factors firing consistently on that backhand side is maybe a little bit unrealistic to expect. And I think that's why he really struggles with this matchup against Alcaraz. And, we're going to talk about how he might be able to win potentially, but Alcaraz, don't get me wrong, is a massive favorite in this match, no doubt, given the head-to-head, given how stylistically they match up. So if we're then talking about, we've talked a little bit about the ad court exchange, what about the drop shot for Alcaraz, because we touched upon that a little bit. So if, as I said, the ball is not deep enough, there's not enough penetration through the court, Alcaraz will utilize that drop shot. It's not always a winner, but he then comes forward. He's very good in and around the net, and he's very good at passing you. And he has that fantastic lob that we all know is a trademark Alcaraz shot. He can also pass you fantastically on the backhand or forehand side. Tsitsipas, the one thing he has going for him is that if he gets the drop shot, he's actually pretty good at the net. I would say he's one of the best players on tour when it comes to net play anyway. I would say top 10. And I think his net play, even against someone like Alcaraz, should put him in good stead. However, he doesn't want to be coming to the net in a compromised position where he's just getting to a drop shot, he's dinked it, and he's almost a sitting duck. Where he wants to be is in positions coming forward on the front foot where he feels like he's in an attacking, he has an attacking intent to finish off the point in the net rather than having to defend at the net. Now, there's a few ways that he can get himself into that position. Of course, on his serve, and I do think his serve, and we'll touch upon that more in depth, needs to be pretty spot on against Alcaraz. But the serve and volley is a really good tactic I think he should use at times, especially out wide on the clay courts. It's a really good tactic to utilize. I'm not sure why people are so against volleying generally on clay and even serve volley. I think someone like Alcaraz and especially Tsitsipas as well should both utilize it. And it doesn't need to be something they utilize all the time, but as a variation, and there's something that they put in there to make the returner think, given that they're both good at transitioning and volleying, it's definitely something that I would utilize, especially with the kick serve. But he needs to be taking some risks at Tsitsipas, especially from the back of the court, and also with the +1 shot. If he needs to hit a backhand, then he needs to, in my opinion, I think he should go for the backhand more. I don't think he should be cautious on that side. If he has to hit a backhand, which in his ideal scenario, he won't be hitting many of them, he needs to nail it cross court. Nail it cross court, go for it. If you miss a few, it's fine. At least the intent is there. Of course, don't be reckless with it, but be calculated with your aggression. I do think on the forehand side, he needs to be able to try and open up on that side. His forehand, especially his serve +1 forehand, is normally extremely good. He needs to make sure it's at the highest level it can be against Alcaraz. He needs to make sure that he's utilizing the into-out forehands, but not just utilizing them, but hitting with enough depth. Because I just feel like with Tsitsipas sometimes, when he's at the back of the court, he can hit with a lot of power and penetration through the court and direction, but sometimes the depth isn't always there. And when the depth isn't there, against someone like Alcaraz, that's when the drop shot becomes a real issue, because he will drop shot you. Don't get mistaken. He will drop shot you, or he'll step in himself. And that's where it becomes an issue for Tsitsipas, is when Alcaraz comes onto you. He wants to push him back, so he will need to hit with depth. And I think he also needs to hit the angle forehand cross court to try and get Alcaraz on the forehand stretching, trying to hit that slice on the defensive so that he can then step in and come to the net. And that's really important. And get him defending on the backhand side. We saw in the past, in previous matches, last year, for example, that he can struggle defending on the backhand side. Most players do. Tsitsipas definitely struggles defending on the backhand side. But Alcaraz does as well. Like, he's not a Novak Djokovic. I don't think he defends as well on the backhand side as, say, a Djokovic. Yes, he's still pretty solid on that side, but Tsitsipas, with his into-out forehand, he has the quality to really hurt Alcaraz. So utilize it. Make him hurt. And don't just say, you know what, Alcaraz has massive weapons, I'm going to be a bit more cautious. He gets dragged into longer rallies. Tsitsipas, he's not going to come out on top against Alcaraz. He needs to try and shorten the points. That means coming forward and transitioning. That means taking more risks on the forehand. It means playing an aggressive brand of tennis. That means Alcaraz is not able to dictate proceedings as he wants to. So that's my thoughts on some of the exchange from the back of the court that we might see. The drop shot from Carlos as well. For Stefanos, talking about his backhand and also risk taking on the forehand side. I've talked about how Tsitsipas needs to hit his forehand a lot, and that's a given. Net play as well, we've talked about that. Serve return dynamic. So there's a few things here. Tsitsipas has to serve big. He has to hit his point. He has to hit his spots even. He has to. He has to serve big, has to hit his spots. And as I said, the serve volley is not a bad tactic. I don't think he should utilize it for second serve, but first serve on the ad side, for example, why not? He might get past occasionally, but if he mixes it up enough and makes Alcaraz think, that I don't see why he won't get some free points. Alcaraz also, by the way, he doesn't always have the best return days, so that's something that Tsitsipas needs to bear in mind. It's a best of five match. The biggest thing for me is that they've never played each other in a best of five. Now, yes, well, they played each other, sorry, in a best of five at the US Open, but that was on a hard court, but they never played each other in a best of five on a clay court. This is where Tsitsipas should be able to compete with Alcaraz the best, in my opinion, or at Roland Garros. I actually don't think a quicker court would suit him as much as this. I think the slower court means he can hit more forehands. I think he has a better chance here, in my opinion. But yeah, the serve, he needs to utilize it. I think he needs to utilize a wide serve as well, as much as possible. Drag Alcaraz out. He's got the forehand. If he goes, for example, on the deuce side and goes out wide and gets Alcaraz to return cross court, his forehand down the line or into out forehand should be a winner, or at least get him really on the front foot to be able to come forward and finish off the point. That's what he should be looking to do. Down the tee as well, we know that he's got a good tee serve. I just think if his serve is firing and he's hitting in a high percentage of first serves in, which should be at least 60% in my opinion, throughout the match, and he's backing it up nicely with his forehand, which we know he can do. As I said, he's got one of the best serve plus one combos on tour. Then it puts him in a good position in his service games. There will be some points where Alcaraz just plays too well, and you just have to put your hands up and say, fine, he's played too well. But generally speaking, I think he needs to try and make sure that he's looking after his service games as much as possible. Anyways, Alcaraz is a natural returner. He might get him in awkward positions. If he gets him on the defensive early in his service points, Tsitsipas, that will be a problem for Tsitsipas, because he struggles, I think, when he's on the defensive straight away on service points, as most players do. And it's not a good position to be in. For Alcaraz, his serve is still a work in progress, I think, in my opinion. It still is. Is very good on the clay in terms of his kick serve. I do think it's very effective. I do think there are still definitely some things he can improve on when it comes to his serve. But one of the biggest things I've seen is his ability to serve and volley transitions beautifully, especially on the clay as well. I do like that part of his game. I also like the fact that he is always looking, like Tsitsipas, to attack behind the serve for that first shot. He knows how important it is. But if you're able to access the backhand first, you might end up getting into the rally early. And I do also think that Alcaraz can make mistakes on the forehand. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I do think this is worth noting. Alcaraz does have days where his forehand is off, or his forehand fluctuates in terms of quality set to set. Now, it didn't happen against Musetti, so that's probably something which, Tsitsipas won't rely on. But, Tsitsipas is capable of out-hitting Alcaraz from the back of the court when we're doing forehand versus forehand anyway. We're talking about the forehand to forehand dynamic, and also in terms of forehand quality. That's what Tsitsipas needs to be. He needs to be in that exchange, and he needs to be dictating proceedings. So we'll see how he gets on. Defensive capabilities, we've touched upon. I think Alcaraz has the better defensive capabilities. He's the more athletic out of the two. Tsitsipas, though, is also extremely athletic, but Alcaraz is the next level, in my opinion, in terms of defensive capabilities. He can do the splits. He's so elastic. He's similar to Djokovic in that sense, and he's so good at moving laterally and chasing down balls. We saw against Musetti, classic Alcaraz chasing down smashes, getting them back into play, chasing down drop shots. And I think he's a type of player that is always making you play one or two extra shots. For Tsitsipas, I think he actually defends his forehand corner really well, which I also think Alcaraz does pretty well as well. But I actually think Tsitsipas defends it better. Backhand corner, I think Alcaraz defends it better than Tsitsipas, but he still struggles definitely at times on that side. Tsitsipas, I think, struggles quite a bit defending that backhand corner. So something for him to bear in mind. One thing as well that I didn't mention, just to finish up on, is I think for Tsitsipas, he needs to disrupt the rhythm of Alcaraz. Everyone talks about how Alcaraz gives you a different shot every time he plays an opponent, and I think that's something that gives him a massive advantage. I think with Tsitsipas, there's a few things he can do with the forehand and backhand. mixing up the amount of spin and height and coverage over the net, I think will really help him, making sure that Alcaraz is not getting the same ball all the time. And also, I think the backhand slice. Now, the issue though I have though is that Tsitsipas's backhand slice is not particularly good. But if he's able to do a backhand slice or a short backhand slice that means he's going to get an Alcaraz backhand, it might be worth hitting just to at least give Alcaraz something different to look at and disrupt his rhythm potentially as well if he needs to engage in some longer rallies, which won't be ideal for Tsitsipas, but on a clay court, you're going to get some of those rallies, no doubt. So in terms of prediction, I'm going to go for Alcaraz in 4 sets. I think Tsitsipas might take a set off him, but I would be surprised if Tsitsipas takes him to 5 or beats him in straight sets, for example, or even 4. I would be surprised if we see a Tsitsipas victory. But like they always say, head-to-heads and unbeatable streaks, they're always there to be broken. So maybe this could be a time. Zverev did it last year. He got absolutely destroyed by Alcaraz in Madrid and then beat him at Roland Garros in 4 sets. So maybe Tsitsipas could do something similar after losing to him in Barcelona. Could he do it? We'll see. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe and well. We'll see you on the next video.